today from knowing who the next Republican candidate will be to go up against Sean Bocherry. I know that because this morning I did a tally and I think it was 106.5 hours left, so it's definitely inside 100. I started this campaign back in August of 2009, so it's been a long campaign, but it's been a good campaign. I've met a lot of great people, and it's been just been a wonderful time. I'm going to give you a little bit of background on myself, and I do want to recognize, of course, Representative Anschutz, who just stood up. I do want to recognize that he's here. I know he may have to leave a little bit early, but I do appreciate him being here too. A little bit of background on myself, why I'm running, what my beliefs are, and then we'll open it up for questions for myself or Mr. Gunadakis with the Higher Right to Life. And I do really appreciate Mike Gunadakis being here also this evening. For those of you, and there's plenty of new faces here tonight, so I do appreciate you being here. Give you a little bit of background. I grew up in a very small town in western Pennsylvania. My grandfather was a coal miner. My father was a railroad worker. My mother was a nurse. Blue collar, Democratic, union-based family. But I got to tell you, that was probably the greatest time of my life because that's where my basic values came from, which were the hard work of a basic family. My dad lost his job when I was 8 years old. We learned very quickly how to work as a family unit to get through all that. And I'm very proud my mother and dad are still alive. They still live back in western Pennsylvania. I was the first person to graduate from college in my family, paid for college myself by working through college as a truck driver, body shop manager, you name it. I worked through as blue collar. Got my degree in business administration, became a CPA with one of the largest firms in the world, Grant Thornton, who is still there. After 2.5 years, I was considered their healthcare expert because that's all I did was healthcare. I was also considered the youngest person in Grant Thornton to ever be considered for partner at age 22, and I was already going to be considered, and that was pretty novel because normally you had to have 5 to 7 years. But it was my work experience and it was the clientele that I was bringing in that was pretty powerful. And ultimately, 2.5 years, I was offered a job in Wadsworth, Ohio. At that time, I was engaged to my high school sweetheart, and I had to make a decision whether I was going to leave Pittsburgh and the company I was with or come here to Ohio. I won't go into the reasons, but it's a pretty unique reason. I actually gave the gentleman my word, and that's why I moved to Wadsworth, and it was probably one of the best moves I ever made. I was married a few months later. My wife's we've been married for 27 years now. We have 3 children. All of them are in college. One of them graduated from Michigan, and when I see this Michigan shirt, I used to always had to tell people, and I'd say, my son just graduated from Michigan, and I'd say, you shouldn't say that on a campaign trail, but he did graduate from Michigan, and I have another son at Notre Dame, and I have a daughter at Indiana University of Pennsylvania, where I went. At age 24, after I got here, I spent a year with the gentleman that offered me this job. Worked very hard. He's still a big supporter of mine and a big friend. But I went off on my own at age 24. I bought a nursing home. I started my life over the next 18 years building an operation that was based on healthcare, nursing home, providing care for the elderly. And I'm proud to say that over an 18-year period, I built an organization that in the year 2000 I sold. And during that period of time, you have your ups and downs, but I tell everybody I employed over 2,500 people. I created over 1,500 jobs. I balanced over 60 business budgets at that time. So it was, and of course I was raising my family at that time too. In 2000, when I sold everything, the community that I lived in and loved at that point in time, Wadsworth, Ohio, I'd already been a fireman for almost 5 years in the community. I was also on the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I was a Planning Commission member, and I was also a member of the Sacred Heart Parish. I was a board member on the finance board of Sacred Heart. So I had given back to my community a lot over those years. I was asked if I would run for president of council. We had a city that was losing money, about $2 million a year. And I was asked if I would be willing to run for president of council to try and take business acclimate into a city government. I did that. I won. First election, I got close to 60+%, somewhere between 60 and 70%. I realized that the only way to balance the budget was to become the mayor. I ran for mayor. I won that election, and I'm happy to say that in my 8 years, not only did I balanced the budget, but I left it with a surplus, and I left the government in better shape than it was when I took over. So I'm very proud of that. I also did one other thing at the end of my term as mayor. I was asked, we had a car dealership, and I tell this story because it leads into why I'm running for Congress. I bought a car dealership in Wadsworth that I really just bought because it was going to close, and there were 50 jobs involved. And when I bought that, I bought it under the scenario of, I don't really need it, but let's see what we can do to fix it. And I'm proud that after I bought it, we kept it alive. We got that balance, that budget balance. We got it working very well. And 14 months later, I had a very viable car dealership in Wadsworth, Ohio, until, guess what happened? General Motors files bankruptcy and turns around and sends every dealer in this country a letter, including me, that said, we don't really believe that you should stay in business anymore. It's a pretty scary letter when you think about it. Anytime you can get something from the government that says, we are taking something away from you, it's something that if you experience one time, it's one time too many. So that kind of gave me a real problem with the federal government. And at the same time, I started to see this guy, John Bocelli, who was voting in his actually first 50 days of his office. He voted for $1 billion an hour for his first 50 days. Started to see that. I started to see him voting for surplus and TARP and all these things that really started affecting us. And at the same time, I was concerned that we were just going in the wrong direction, absolutely going in the wrong direction. What really told me we were going in the wrong direction with John Bocelli was that John would come to the people and tell everybody, I am not going to vote for cap and trade, and then he would vote for cap and trade. He would say that I'm going to not vote for all these crazy government programs, and then he would vote for some of these crazy government programs. But the other thing he did, which was very unique, and it hit me at home, was he also stood up in front of a Ford dealership in Canton, Ohio, and says, I'm going to stand behind car dealerships because they are a great asset within every community. I will tell you, legislation came to the House of Representatives on July 14, 2009 to reinstate all car dealerships. I was watching it very closely because I had sent Mr. Bocelli a number of letters, and I got the impression that he was going to vote to reinstate car dealerships. I will tell you, when that vote hit the House floor, he voted against it. On the next day, I made sure that a message was delivered to him that I was going to remove him from office. And that's truly the reason why I stepped up and said, I'm now going to run for office. I can tell